Hello, hello, and welcome back to the Black Girl Iowa podcast. I'm your host, Emily, and I've got a really good show for you guys today. And I know I say that every week, but it's funny. The other day, I was talking to a friend, and they asked me thus far which interview has been my favorite, which episode has been my favorite. And if I'm being completely honest, I don't have a favorite because every conversation that I have had and I've been able to share with all of you guys on this podcast up to this point has been incredibly thought provoking and amazing. And I am just so thankful and blessed that these people have taken the time to talk with me and we have these conversations about, generational differences, about what it's like for a Black man raising daughters in Iowa, to having money and what that means at my big girl age to have money and be fiscally responsible. So, I'm never gonna say that I'm gonna give you guys like a mediocre episode because that's just not gonna happen. But like this episode today is really eye-opening for me because of the context, and it's something that I have never experienced. So I'm really excited to introduce this guest and have you guys listen to this interview. But before we even get there, let's go ahead and go into our Black Iowa. So today, I'd like to tell you about Pauline Brown Murphy. She is known as the Madam C.J. Walker of Iowa, as she was a lifelong resident of Des Moines. After being denied entrance to cosmetology programs in Iowa, Humphrey traveled to Chicago with her young daughter to attend the Madam C.J. Walker Cosmetology School in 1934. She studied theory, practice, and how to master the beauty needs of Black women. She returned 2 years later and passed the State Board of Examination to become a licensed cosmetologist in Iowa. Then, Humphrey opened the first beauty shop for Black women in 1935. Humphrey wanted to provide opportunities for Black women to be independent and practice their craft. In 1939, she established the Crescent School of Beauty Culture, located in the historical Central Street District in Des Moines, which was thriving for many Black businesses. The school's motto was aim high and hold your aim. She enrolled on average 30 students each semester and trained stylists on marcelling, straightening, bleaching and tinting, permanents, pressing and styling, facials, manicures and pedicures, and cutting and conditioning. According to her granddaughter, Julie James, Humphrey not only educated students, but did untold service to her community. In addition, the school was a stepping stone for many men and women to gain economic independence as cosmetologists, stylists, and cosmetology instructors. This episode is dedicated to the life and memory of Pauline Brown Humphrey. She paved the way for Black women to not only thrive as cosmetologists, but also as successful business owners. We thank you for being a leading example in establishing a legacy that should never be forgotten. All right. So, Miss Pauline, thank you. Shout out to all of our business owners that are owning shops, beauty salons, manicure artists, pedicure professionals, all of those things. We definitely appreciate you and everything that you have done. And just know that your legacy has a long, long and cherished history. So let's go ahead and get into this interview today. This is a really good conversation because it's not necessarily something that I have experienced as of yet in my life, but I do know that a lot of you will appreciate this conversation. So we're going to go ahead, run the interview, and then I'll be back at the end with final thoughts. All right, everyone. At this time, I'd like to introduce my guest, Clemente Love. She is a certified birth and postpartum doula and lactation educator from St. Louis, Missouri. A 2002 graduate of Parkway North High School, she received her Bachelor of Arts degree in Communication Studies in 2008 from Fontbonne University. She is dedicated to many causes, including community activism and education, in addition to being a wife and mother of 2 beautiful children. To name a few of her accomplishments, she is a member of the one and only Delta Sigma Theta sorority, La Leche League USA, Doulas of North America International, the Iowa Black Doula Collective, the Des Moines Metro Opera DEI Task Force, and currently is an advisory board member of the United States Lactation Consultants Association. When asked about her time in Iowa, she said that she found some genuine people, including her sweet sorors, her clients, Black and Bold Coffee, and yours truly, me. Ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary friends, I'd like to welcome and introduce Miss Clemente Love to the podcast.
Hey now, I gotta say one thing though. We gotta say
Yes.
Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated.
Oh, I'm so
Boo.
sorry.
That's okay. I
Delta
got you,
Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. And like the thing is, my auntie is a Delta. I should have known.
girl.
I should have known. I'm so sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. I got us. I'm good. We good.
Yes,
We good.
yes. So, Clemente and I met. So at the time, I was working at Simpson College, my alma mater. I've talked about it on the podcast. Clemente is the wife of one of the football coaches that was at Simpson at the time. And really, during the pandemic, after George Floyd and everything, Clemente really challenged the city of Indianola in the best possible way. So let's just get started about you coming to Iowa and kind of what all transpired leading up to you protesting and marching and really holding Indianola accountable. You want to talk about that?
Sure. So, of course, the trajectory for us to go to Simpson was just my husband's job. He took a job there.
Mhm.
That's typical for us. He finds a place where the money is, and then we just go. We
Get up and
pack
go.
up and go.
Mhm.
So, and in his career, because of what he does as a football coach, it's been in mostly predominantly white spaces, in rural
Mhm.
spaces.
Right.
So we kind of come into a community like that already knowing, quote unquote, the rules, right? Like we know
Mhm.
not to, stay out too late,
Yep.
like get
Right.
to your house, like don't
Yep.
walk alone. Like we just knew these things innately. The only thing that was different about Iowa, in particular Indianola, was that now we have children. Prior
Okay.
to, we did not have any. Really, our moves didn't really involve any of our kids, just like one or two others. But in a predominantly rural, like very rural area, this was the first time we were dealing with considering our kids and what they
Mhm.
were exposed to. And so, as you stated, it was kind of right in the midst of George Floyd and the pandemic. And I remember specifically people within the community saying, okay, I'm going to Des Moines to go fight for the cause. Like,
Mhm.
I'm going down there to go show my support
Mhm.
for, all, Black Lives Matter. And, to show people that as a white person, I stand with the Black community.
Mhm.
I was like, that's dope. But you do know that happens here. Like the whatever you're fighting, it happens like
Mhm.
literally right here.
Yep.
And it was kind of like oh, okay. Um, what do you do with that? I guess in their response, it was kind of like, okay, yeah, that's true. But I
Mhm.
want to go where the people are.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, you do that.
Mhm.
And when I heard that, when I saw that actually, because it was more of saying, it was that performative aspect
Mhm.
of protesting that I saw
Yes.
that kind
Mhm.
of lit me a little bit within my community. I was like, yo, like it goes down here.
Mhm.
And people would drive down and then come back up and live their happy little lives
Right.
and not talk about it.
Mhm.
So, I was part of the PTO at the time, and I remember there were a couple women that I kinda gotten close to,
Mhm.
and one woman in particular invited me to a meeting with another mom who was white raising black a black child that
Mhm.
she had adopted.
Yeah.
And she wasn't feeling this woman who had adopted a black child was not feeling this Black Lives Matter situation.
Mhm.
And I was like, well, as a black woman raising black children, it's very important for them to understand how the world around them sees them, right?
Mhm.
How it's not all lives matter.
R r
It's not. It's not. That's why we're
If
saying
only it
it
were that easy,
right.
right?
It
Okay.
would be
Yeah.
that easy. So, but it's not. So she was like, well, maybe you can talk with her. So I go to this meeting at this park, and she did tell me that there were some police officers or some patrolmen that would be there. And I didn't really think too much of it. I kinda didn't understand that part of it, but she did kind of warn me in, like,
Mhm.
a little, like, "Oh, and there'll be some other people there." And I was like, "Okay, cool." So I took my kids, I took my husband, took George, and I was like, "Hey, we're
Mhm.
gonna go down here and let's go talk." I wanna meet them, I wanna see if there's something I can kinda bring to the situation. Maybe she's not
Mhm.
clear on raising a
Yes.
child that is
Yes.
black, right?
Yes.
Like how that actually works.
Correct.
Um, Not challenging her motherhood or her nurturing, but
Mhm.
definitely challenging the idea that you've got it figured out, right?
Mhm.
And saying all lives matter helps the situation, and it doesn't.
Mhm. Right.
So I get there and we're talking, and the lady is not really trying to engage with me,
Mhm.
and that's fine. And at the time, I had a Black in Iowa shirt on. I
Yes.
was very much supporting Black in Iowa. And I remember the quote unquote mom friend from the PTO.
Mhm.
She said she wanted to take a picture with me. And I said, okay, that's fine,
Mhm.
to show support. She took the picture. And then by the time I got home, she was calling me and asking me, well, what should I say about the picture? And I was like, ma'am, what do you mean? What should you say about this picture? Like, you
It's a
say it's a
picture.
picture. You can
Yeah.
say whatever you
Out with another
like,
mom.
right, like, it just happened
Like,
to be
right.
black, and she's
Right.
wearing a shirt that says "Black in Iowa," like,
Right.
during this tumultuous time, right? Like,
Right.
so I
Mhm.
feel like at that point, I was like, "Okay, you're kinda teetering the fence," and I told her, I said, "Hey, look, if you have, like, a feeling about supporting me, then why are you at like, if you care for me, it's not gonna matter. Like, you're
Right.
gonna say something uplifting, whatever's at your heart of
Mhm.
hearts, it's not gonna be taken any kind of way. Just, don't ask me what you
Right.
supposed because
Right. Right.
what's the question? I don't understand the question.
Right.
And so she posted the picture and she says, I'm supporting Clemente because I love Clemente. I care about her. So Black Lives Matter. And she got like 200 and something likes from like the people within clearly the Indianola community, right? Like
Right.
that's her home base. That's where she's from.
Mhm.
And so I was like, oh, this is awesome. Let me put out a call to action, right? Because in my
Mhm.
mind, I've been thinking this whole time, like, okay, how do we get people in the community activated for the cause?
Right.
So I said, hey, tomorrow or Wednesday, it was a day or two before I actually did it. I said, I'm going to go do a walk. I'm going to do a walking protest at this time, at this location, if anybody wants to join me. And there
Mhm.
were like 300 likes of just that, my statement, right?
Mhm.
And the next day or whenever I did it, again, it was a short period, no one showed up.
Mm.
So my initial feeling was like, okay, maybe someone will notice that I'm here wearing this Black in Iowa shirt, this
Right.
black woman walking up and down the street, like they would
Right.
notice this. And no one came.
Mhm.
And I had the most emotional moment of my life when I circled back and realized that I was still walking by myself.
Mhm.
I broke down and
Mm.
was just like, I realized then that I was not part of the community I was of the community.
Mm-hmm.
At that very moment when I was like, yo, no one showed up for me. And I
Mm-hmm.
had said to everyone, this was what was important to me, and no one showed up for
Right.
me. By the time I walk my little happy Black self home, I don't know if we can curse on here. I'll try not to, I'll try to, you know what I want to say.
Yes, yes, I
Uh,
do.
by the time I worked myself back home, I was angry
Yeah.
because I had time to process everything that I had put into the community as a
Mm-hmm.
PTO mom, as
Mm-hmm.
someone who was trying to insert herself in this community, had been like
Yeah.
showing up to events, like showing my face, speaking to people, saying hello, like being a civil servant, right? Like
Yeah.
doing all the things. No one checked on me. No one checked
Mhm.
on my family during this tumultuous time where it's
Yep.
on the news 24/7. I mean, it was 24/7
It
at that
was.
time.
It was heavy, and I think your story is incredibly representative of the Black experience in Iowa.
Mhm.
First, I'm going to go to Des Moines and protest. Now, here's the thing about being from Iowa is that you have to be very specific to let people know where you are from, especially if there is that undertone of what party do you align yourself with?
Mhm.
There are times to say, I'm from Iowa. There are other times, I am from Des Moines, Polk County, downtown.
That
I went
part.
to, you know what I mean? Like,
That
I
part.
went to Roosevelt High School. You really have to break it down for people. And I think it is frustrating because in your instance, Indianola, Iowa, Warren County is 15 minutes south of Des Moines. So it's so crazy, right? How there's just like such a big divide when it's really only a piece of highway that takes 15 minutes to travel.
Like for real. Like
Yeah.
and it's on the south side, right?
Yes.
Like that's the other
Yeah.
part. I was like, okay, like this is not like super affluent area. This is
Mm-hmm.
not like what, and that's what like really got me like, okay, let me remember where I am, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm in like rural Iowa, like
Mm-hmm.
rural Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of lit a fire under me. And so when I got home,
Mm-hmm.
I typed up a scathing message
I love it.
on Facebook. It was just Facebook at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I I didn't initially like tag like normally would you put their names like in the message. I put them under it. And I
Yeah.
and I did that specifically because I wanted to call people out, but I want them to sit in understanding that I'm
Right.
trying to, as a friend,
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to let you know that I'm hurt.
Yep.
And so when I did that, I was like, this ain't enough. I should have probably tagged them. And then I decided, let me go to the newspaper
Yes. Yep. And
because that
that article, woo,
that kicked it off.
it
That
really
kicked it
did.
off. That kicked it
It
off.
really did. Yeah. And that article, I specifically remember you saying the city, the community, the people of Indianola failed me, my family, and my children.
I said, you're doing it wrong.
All
Those were my
wrong.
exact words. If you
Mm-hmm.
think that you are holding space for people like me, you have done it wrong.
Yep.
Yet again, I don't know what the
Absolutely.
other again was, but I knew, of course, I knew others had probably tried,
Mm-hmm.
right, to tell you, or you thought that you were doing the right. You really thought that you were doing something, boo boo.
Mm-hmm.
No, no, no.
No.
Let me tell you, you're going about it wrong. And I liken it to and I think I've talked to you about this, a chin check, right? Like we
Mm-hmm.
have family members that are, your mom is trying to correct you. The first thing she does is make you pull your chin up and it's
Mm-hmm.
like, yo,
Yep.
get it together.
Yep.
Okay. You're
Mm-hmm.
fine. You made a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Wipe your tears,
Yep.
get your stuff together,
And do it
try
again.
again. Right.
Yep.
And so that was really that was really the heart of what I want my message to be. My message was that you failed a community member not just because I was Black, but because I've watched you support other community members. I've watched you support the students of the high school when they couldn't go to prom, and you
Mhm.
all rallied together to go support
Mhm.
them in any way that you could when you knew they weren't gonna have a freaking prom,
Right.
right? I
Mhm.
saw you rally together when there was a member of the PTO who was getting divorced, and you
Mhm.
knew that she was going through a tough time or that he was going through a tough time, and you decided to support them in the only way you could, which was lending an ear or making dinner or spending time with them to take them out for a drink. You did that.
Yeah.
But when it came to me telling you, I am hurting and this is where I will be, show up, they didn't do it.
I
And I let them know.
Yeah,
You did it wrong.
absolutely.
Mhm.
And so what happened after the article and after the
Of
Facebook post?
course,
I know what
of
happened,
course.
but I want you to tell everybody what happened.
After after the chin checking, after the letting you know that I'm mad, it became, "Oh, we didn't know. So let's go rally, right? Let's go. What time are you there tomorrow? What time are you
Mhm.
gonna be there next week?" And it trickled in. Initially it was um a couple of people and a
Mhm.
reporter. Then it became the football team. Then it
Mhm.
became, other people within the community who wanted to participate and wanted to have conversations with me. It grew from, again, myself
Mhm.
to, I don't even think I remember if I kept count, but I think it got up to like 50 people walking
Mhm.
up and down the street at one point.
Mhm.
And by that time, we were having conversations, which
Right.
is really what I wanted to happen in any way. I wanted there
Mhm.
to be conversations about what was going on, what people were experiencing, what I had experienced as a
Mhm.
Black woman living in, Indianola, what my children are experiencing at school as two of two. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Yep.
like
Yep.
it was a whole thing. And even being a Black couple, like
Mm.
I'm looking around at the grocery store and I'm like, okay, where okay.
Yeah.
No, it's
Now
just
we
it's
ain't
just
there.
us. It's just us, right? We're the nucleus. I was trying and
Yeah.
again, you love who you love, but I was really trying to see like how deep does this go in our community
Mhm.
that people who are a nucleus like us of a Black husband, Black wife, like how were they experiencing that, right? How was the community? Have they ever seen that?
Right.
I was
Yeah.
trying to get a feel for it.
Absolutely. And it's crazy because, I remember reading the article and for me, it wasn't a question. Like my at the time husband was like, "Well, where are you going? It's Saturday morning. I'm going down to protest in Indianola. Bye. See you later." For me, it was easy,
Mhm.
right? But I really think that what you did, especially for that community, and this is a community that is 15 minutes south of Des Moines. I went to Simpson, from 2004 to 2008. My father was at Simpson. He graduated from there back in 1978. And so I already knew, right, the need to have Black voices being heard. But I really think that what you did was you reminded the community that even though your population of Black people is less than representative of what the state actually has, that doesn't mean that you don't have Black students coming. That doesn't mean that you don't have Black faculty, Black staff. You know, it doesn't mean that your community is immune.
Mm.
And I really think too, calling out what um, performative activism actually looks like, you know, it was really important. And some of those conversations, I would hope that they are still having them in Indianola. But I really think that another thing that I don't think a lot of people really realized is I remember because I went down there twice for the protest. It was dangerous.
Yes,
You
like,
know, like
we were
it was
it was
not
dangerous, and
it was dangerous.
it was once people knew exactly what I was doing in rural Indianola,
Very red Warren County.
people were hot.
Very upset.
They were throwing and I think that was one of the biggest conversations that I remember having was
Mhm.
once it started to pick up and people started getting upset about me voicing this, like, "It happens here" situation, and they were realizing what I was protesting for, and when they knew we were gonna be
Mhm.
there were, like, protests for the protest, right?
Yeah.
They were throwing things, there were
Mhm.
obscenities, there
Yep.
was, language and well, that's what obscenities are, of course. But
Yeah.
there was, like, there was I mean, anything that you could think of that they attempted to do to
Mhm.
scare people out
Mhm.
of almost hitting people,
Yep.
um, you know, putting on their exhaust really,
Yeah.
really loudly as soon as they pass us or, putting down the brakes so that the smoke would come. I mean, it was just like,
It was it was it was
wow.
it was definitely sketch. And, you know, it reminds you of what happens when a community doesn't recognize
Mm,
those pieces that are there.
yeah.
And also when a community doesn't recognize that what is safe for them isn't safe for me.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I really think that that was a conversation that started to be a lot more had. I feel like that fall when the students came back, that was a whole other conversation
Yeah.
that no one really was ready to have on
No.
campus.
Mm-mm.
And I really think that you really lit a fire under faculty, under staff, under administration to really do what they needed to do to protect those students.
Oh, and really to
Um,
protect their own, because
yeah,
remember, I'm married to a
yeah,
football
you
coach,
are
right?
married to one of the football coaches.
Right. So it was like, oh, like
Yeah,
I think it came to not just even the students, but like it's like I care about him.
yeah,
He cares about her.
mm-hmm,
They have like, and again, that's I want to say poison of it all because
mm-hmm,
it shouldn't take for you to know a Black person to have that empathy for what they're going through. You know what I mean? Like, that's not your Black person. And I
yo,
think that was the key thing is what
mm-hmm,
people started to realize if they really
mm-hmm,
dug in, the only reason why they cared was it was
mm-hmm.
because it was the Black man that they knew.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's really where empathy is lost,
Mhm,
especially on a Black woman.
mhm, mhm,
Empathy is absolutely lost.
mhm.
And, that's going to be a whole other podcast
Look,
episode
girl,
that we
bring
are
me
going to
back.
have that conversation.
We
Cause
can come
I'm a
back.
round table that one to be like,
Yes,
look, like, no, like it's so crazy how, you know, there is this person, there is this woman, there is this person that has a direct connection to something in the community that if it wasn't there, no one would know anything about Indianola.
none. And
You
the
know what I mean?
and that was the
And
question too. I mean, I'm so
yeah.
not mean to cut you,
No,
but
no, 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 you're fine.
that was the question. So someone
Mhm.
asked me, I think it was a journalist, they were like, "So why Indianola?" And I was like, I'm quite sure I would have been able to do this anywhere because that's been the spaces that I've been in. These are the
Mhm.
spaces that I have been in." I
Mhm.
think the breaking point was George Floyd.
Yeah.
That was the breaking point for me. So
Mhm.
wherever I would have been,
This was gonna
this was
happen
going down.
regardless.
Right, right. It was going
Regardless,
down.
this was gonna happen. And I just remember during that time, and then we'll go into the next part of our conversation. I remember in that time, I remember I went to the first one, and
Mhm,
then that following weekend, I brought my nephews.
mhm,
And my nephews at the time, they were, I think, probably like 11 and 13.
mhm.
They were
Yeah.
young,
Mhm.
and now they're 14 and 16,
Oh,
which I don't want to talk about it.
that's a whole nother podcast too, y'all.
Whole nother
Like
podcast. But I remember having the conversation with my ex-husband, and that's also going to be a podcast episode, but whatever. More than likely by the time this airs, it'll already have aired. But my ex-husband had a problem. He did not understand why it was important for me to take my nephews.
Mm,
And I had to literally break it down. The world sees these two boys as cute Black boys. But the minute they get older, they get taller, the bass drops in their voice, they are going to be a threat. And it, I
instantly,
don't think that. I don't think that.
instantaneously. I mean,
Exactly.
they can get a little bit taller or have a little bit of a shadow across
Yeah.
the lip.
And they're a threat. And and basically what I said was I need them to understand that their life matters, that their thoughts, their opinions, them enjoying boyhood, it matters. And I want them to see that the communities around them recognize them for who they are, even though society from a certain point on is always going to see them as a threat.
Yes.
And he could not understand that. You know what I mean? And, to throw shade to my ex-husband, my ex-husband was a Trump supporter. So there was no way he was really going to understand the significance of Black boys and Black bodies. I mean, he didn't even really understand the significance of a Black woman being out there, speaking out, being vocal. You know what I mean? So I really think that what you did for that community is something that 50 years down the line, when there is a kid that is studying the pandemic and George Floyd and they find that article, they're going to be like, wow, that woman who is not from here was the one that took a stand. Where was everybody else?
Right. And to take that to just a little step further, remember later on, a year later, I ended up running for school board.
Yes.
I ran for school
I
board.
remember that.
And if I am correct, I am probably the first Black woman to run for any kind of office in Indianola that I know of. So I double checked with the local paper, and she's like, I think you're right.
Exactly.
So it's gonna be 2 blurbs.
And to be the first in 2021,
that part. It's not, girl.
Come on.
I'm like, what are we doing?
What are we doing?
What are we doing here?
What are we doing?
You're
and
doing
we are
it wrong.
still
We're doing
and
it
we
wrong.
are still seeing firsts like that all over the state. So yeah. So, but I really think that is one of the reasons why I wanted you on this podcast, because I feel like me and you were similar in that for all the places that I live, I always made sure to really dig in, get into the community and get involved. And you specifically got involved with the community by becoming a doula.
Yes, I did.
And this is a conversation. I have some other podcasts lined up with other doulas and medical professionals in Des Moines, but I really want to speak to your journey and the importance of becoming a doula. So I do know that, especially in the Black community, it is good to have a doula because your doula is there to support you, but is also there to advocate for you during childbirth. You and I both know no other race of women in America has more complications or dies in childbirth with modern day medicine than Black women. So having that advocate is incredibly important. So tell me, what led you to go on this journey of becoming a doula?
Well, this is another long story. I'll try to put it together, but
we got time, please.
Look, okay. So it started with the fact that when I was pregnant with my son, I worked prior to all my other endeavors, becoming a doula and working in banks and doing other jobs. My aspiration initially was to be a doctor. I wanted to be an OBGYN. But I went to Xavier University for a semester or a year, got, I think, a C in organic chemistry. They pulled me to the corner. They was like, baby, this ain't for you.
This ain't it.
This ain't it. You can't be making those C's in organic chem. It's not gonna work. Pick something else.
And hold on. Then didn't I identify that you knew my sister? Or you knew of my sister?
I think I knew of your sister. Yes, we did. And that was like, girl, you could do you got all these little nuggets of the
I remember that because my mom did your hair and when we told you, oh, Olivia went to Xavier, you were just like, what?
Right. I was like, oh, shit.
I think, and honestly, that right there, that meant a lot to my mother.
Oh.
She asks about you all the time. So the fact that I have you on the podcast, she's gonna die.
I love her. Love you, mom. She's amazing.
Miss Doretha. Yes.
Okay.
I love it. Okay, no, go back. So Xavier University. Okay, go.
So I wanted to be. I did have an inkling to be, of course, a doctor. That comes from my family. My dad's side of the family all have higher ed degrees, like PhDs
Mhm.
and things like that, in engineering, lawyers, biochemistry, like all of these
Wow.
things on my dad's side. My mom's side is like I'm like second generation. On my dad's side, I'm like third generation college grad.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
I got some, I
Right.
got some little, you need to do some things, girl.
Right.
We've been
Mhm.
waiting. We got ours, get yours kind of situation. So
Right.
that didn't work out. But when I got pregnant, I of course understood a lot about how Black people are treated in healthcare. So I'd always been taught early on, like, yo, you got to advocate for yourself. You got to use right terminology. People will try to talk above you, or try to
Mhm.
talk down to you about your symptoms, about what you're feeling. But so you have to be very intentional with
Mhm.
the information that you come with, be specific about what you're feeling, get a second opinion, get a third opinion, like really don't let medical professionals take you under, right? Like
Right.
drown your voice, because that's
Mhm.
just not, things could happen. And
Mhm.
so during my pregnancy with my son, I didn't know a lot of things that were going on. Like I had an understanding of like birth, but I
Mhm.
was like, I didn't have an understanding of really how to advocate for myself in the space.
Mhm.
So after I given birth to my son, I had some issues with breastfeeding. And so that's really where everything kind of started, was my advocacy after I had my child and I wanted to breastfeed, and I couldn't find people that looked like me in the spaces that I was going.
Right.
So I inserted myself in the breastfeeding world. Like
Mhm.
I jumped.
Right.
I was like, I'm gonna be here in case another Black woman comes in here and needs
Mhm.
somebody, then
Mhm.
I've got her, right? So
Mhm.
then I got pregnant again, and I had learned a little bit more about pregnancy and birth. I didn't have a doula, but I had a midwife. And
Okay.
I remember in both of my births, there were two instances where no one advocated for me and I couldn't advocate for myself.
Mm.
In my first birth, there was a doula in the room who was hired by the hospital,
Okay.
and she did not support me. I remember thinking like,
Mm.
why are you here if you're just going to
Right.
watch me? You're in my space. I need you to get
Right.
out. That
Right.
was the first experience. So I was like, okay, I had a bad doula. Good thing I didn't pay her, but I had a bad doula and she was still in my space, right?
Mhm.
And then the second incident with my daughter was, I remember they had found meconium when my water broke, and they were concerned. And I'm in the middle of pushing, you're waiting for surgeries. I had her naturally. My son, I had an epidural. Um, and I was waiting for, a surge to push. And I remember the NICU nurses being like literally looking at her watch and going, okay, so how much longer is this going to be? I just got a page for another child. And I was like, I'm laying there literally trying to give birth, bring life into the world, another Black
Right.
life into the world. And this is what I hear. And no one
Right.
spoke up. I
Mhm.
mean, not even my husband. And no, not to down him, but it was like, what you don't know, you don't know. You
Right.
don't know what you can say. You don't know what you can do. You don't know what the
Right.
procedures are. So fast forward, we moved to Iowa.
Mhm.
And right before the pandemic, the Iowa Black Doula Collective had kind of, I think they had started, but this was
Mhm.
like their third cohort that they
Mhm.
had presenting scholarships to Black women who wanted to become doulas. So I've
Mhm.
always been interested. Like I said, I wanted to be an OB. So I was like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and I'm already in the birth world as it relates to lactation. At that point, I have been in it for 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
So I have some knowledge behind the breastfeeding part and a little bit in the birthing part, but I wanted more.
Mhm.
And so I applied. Well, actually, the first time I saw it, I couldn't apply. It was
Mhm.
already closed. And
Okay.
then the pandemic happened. And then after
Right.
the pandemic, I was watching. I was keeping my
Uh-huh.
eye on them. And then
Mhm.
they had another cohort, and I immediately applied.
Mhm.
And from there, my world just blew up. My
Mhm.
world was rocked from the moment that I got with the collective and was able to really hone and learn more about birth.
Mhm.
and what it looks like and I know people say, like, you're advocating for someone. I like to say I'm teaching you to advocate for yourself, right? Because
Yeah.
I can't go in a birth space and say, "This is what she wants."
Mhm.
That's not my lane. They're
Mhm.
not gonna listen to me anyway because I'm not the birthing person. The
Right.
person that they're gonna listen to is the person who's giving birth, or their partner or their proxy, or
Mhm.
whomever. They're not gonna listen to me. So that's
Mhm.
not for me. That's like when I hear people say, "Oh, you're gonna advocate for me." Yes, I can. I will speak up
Mhm.
when I need to speak to the room, I will do that. But my job, my soul's deepest passion is being able to educate families
Mhm.
about how to advocate for themselves. And
Right.
I'm the eyes in the room. I'm telling them, yo, this is like, I know we talked about this. This is what's happening. We got to speak up. But
Yeah.
this was not in your plan, so you got to speak up. Or I talked to the partner. This is
Mhm.
going on. We got to speak up because this wasn't part of your plan. Do you want to I'm the coach,
Right.
right?
Right.
I've given them the playbook. I've given them the information.
Mhm.
It's me kind of nudging them to say, okay, things are going a
Right.
little to the left. You might want to throw a different kind of pass. You
Mhm.
need, and I don't, girl. As long as I've been married to my husband, I still ain't got football all the way down, child.
Oh, girl.
I'm
Okay.
yeah, I'm a sad
We're gonna
case.
have to work on
Look,
that.
girl, when you
We're
see
gonna have to
20,
work on it.
it's not
Okay.
even, it's, well, you, you're gonna have to love me, or hate me at
And
this
see,
point.
like for me, this is what happens when your daddy has been playing football since he was like 10 years old and he
Mhm,
played college ball. Are you
mhm.
kidding me? Like, I scare my boyfriend sometimes and I'm just like, what do you mean he didn't see that hole? The pass rush is ridiculous. And he's just like, who are you?
Right, yeah. I mean,
So, but I
I
get the reference.
yes. So I'm sitting here going, "Oh, yeah, I can make a little connection."
Right.
But that's the passion that I have for it, is being able to give a voice. I know what it was like to not be able to go and something's wrong and no one's saying anything.
Yeah.
And to look around the room and have big eyes going, "What just happened to me?" And everybody like, "Well, what do you want me to do?" You know what I mean? Like,
Right. Yeah.
I
I
didn't
just,
want
I,
that to happen.
Yeah, and I couldn't imagine being in that situation. I don't have any children. I would like to have some
Mhm.
someday, but we will see what happens. But I've noticed this trend more and more of of a doula in that, just like what you said, the advocating is definitely there, but also you are informing, this new mother and the family and the husband and the kids of what options are actually available when it
Right,
comes to childbirth.
right,
And I think that that's really important. And what I've learned is that a lot of doulas are giving these options, and at the same time, they're also speaking with the doctors too to make sure that that option is the best. You
right,
know what I mean?
right,
And because I've got a friend that is an OB, and that's what she's told me is that a lot of the time when they come for their appointments to get their ultrasounds and things like that, the doula is also there so that if she says, I want to have a temp birth, but it's just like, no, you can't do that.
right, right,
Like
right,
like, they're the ones that are also there to just make sure that there is that understanding, right?
right.
And I think that that is incredibly important. So the next thing I kind of want to go into a little bit is we've established you had these experiences that led you to want to, give this education to others.
Mhm.
Talk to me about the connection between becoming a doula and then also you're an entrepreneur.
Yes.
So it's two things at once, really. And, entrepreneurship, I am learning with this podcast is not easy. And it is
Yo,
all on the job training. So talk
look.
to me a little bit about how you balance being a doula and also managing your business.
Let me tell you something. I got in the business to help people. I was not trying to start no business. I was trying to be here for the people. I was not trying to be no LLC.
Yeah.
I was not trying to keep up with taxes. I was not trying, girl,
Uh-huh.
it's a thing. I didn't know. We didn't
Mm-hmm.
know. And I think with the collective, with the Iowa Black Doula Collective, that's part of their mission. The
Mhm.
mission is not just to create doulas. I mean, that's the heart of it, but it's also to create Black businesses,
Mhm.
right? To support Black women creating Black
Mhm.
businesses. And
Mhm.
initially, I was like, okay, yeah, let's jump in. And then we got to the business part, and I was like, yo, what? Like, I got wait, how Imma do all this? Like, wait a
Right.
minute. I was not ready.
Mhm.
Um, what I can say about, um, being a doula and entrepreneurship is if you have the passion, the entrepreneurship w kind of will be like it's not it's not a hassle so much.
Mhm.
Like, my passion is to be there and to be present with my clients, to help provide, them with information so that they can make informed decisions, to hold space for them. And if I wanna do it right, I've gotta have
Mhm.
my business in order,
Yep,
right? So I
absolutely.
can't have really one without the other
Mhm.
because that's what's gonna drive me. I gotta make sure I get this right for my client. I've gotta make sure I have insurance, right? I've
Mhm.
gotta make sure that I can collect a payment, okay? I
Yeah,
gotta make sure
absolutely.
that I can pay bills because also this takes me away from my family, right? We're
Mhm.
not just talking about a couple, you know, the not regular 9 to 5. I'm
Mhm.
setting aside time during family time,
Mhm.
both times to support families. And
Mhm.
then it's like maybe a 2-day stretch, right? It depends on the labor, right?
Yeah,
It
because
depends on the labor.
because let me tell you, who's the one that determines how long a woman's gonna be in labor? The
The,
baby.
the baby, the baby,
Yeah.
yes,
I don't
that's
know much about childbirth, but I know that part.
yes. And so like there was a lot of fight in me in the beginning because I was like, I did not sign. I mean, I know I signed up for this, but
Mhm.
nobody told me
Right.
that I was gonna have to keep these receipts. And nobody
Yep.
told me that I was gonna have to um get an LLC, be recognized
Mhm.
by the state, like
Yeah.
all of those things, get an EIN so that my accounts can be correct because you don't want to mix business with your personal money. Like
Right.
I didn't know all of those pieces. And again, once I had that up under me and I got the basics done, I mean, even talking about MPI numbers, national provider identifiers, like
Mhm.
that was a big piece for me that has
Mhm.
allowed me to continue to grow my business. Even
Mhm.
here in Texas, where I am now, I
Mhm.
don't have the clientele that I used to have, but I have access. And
Yes.
so that access gives me kind of a one up on most
Mhm.
others that are doing the same thing.
Mhm.
But yeah, girl, I was like, oh, this is
Yeah.
hard. And
Mhm.
I don't know what I'm doing. I'm gonna do it
Right.
because I want to be here for these families. I want to be
Yes.
here in the right way.
Right. Yeah, and I think that that's fantastic, especially that the Iowa Black Doula Collective does all of that. And I think in my research with doing this podcast and really trying to understand the Black community and understand just the inner workings of it, even past when I was born.
Mhm.
The one thing that I have learned in my research, and it's even in the person that I highlighted in the Black Iowa fact for this episode,
Mhm.
she was known, her name was Pauline Brown Humphrey. She was known basically as a Madam CJ Walker of Iowa.
Okay.
She couldn't get a cosmetology license or go to school here. She kept getting denied. So she went to the Madam CJ Walker School of Beauty in Chicago,
Mhm.
and she studied and she understood, and she not only learned, how to become a beautician and really care for Black hair, but also how to become an entrepreneur and how to create her business. And so what she did was she took 2 years in Chicago. She came back here. She opened up the Crescent School of Beauty in the historic Center Street district.
Okay.
And then she also became a licensed cosmetologist here, opened her school, became a beautician, but also taught other Black people how to make money and be independent and be
Yeah.
economically independent. And I really love that that's what the collective is doing for women that want to be doulas. And what I'm starting to notice is that when one person figures it out, instead of gatekeeping that information, they spread it out to everybody else.
You got to, because it dies with you, right?
Yeah.
And as culturally, we don't work that way. We don't operate that way. We tell our stories. We pass our stories down.
Mhm.
We pass down our history. We pass down
Mhm.
what we know to the next.
The
To
next.
they Because that's always been a part of our story. I mean, even before
Mhm.
we got here, we were
Yeah.
passing down information. We were holding space for one another. So it's
Mhm.
really not in us to gatekeep
Yeah.
situations and things.
Exactly.
It's to us. It's part of us. It's running through us to share and
Mhm.
to make abundance for
Mhm.
everyone so we can all eat. It's not just
Exactly.
about me and my plate. I want to make
Mhm.
sure you got something at your house too. So if you need some sugar, I
Absolutely.
got you.
Listen, because at the end of the day, if I win and
Uh-huh.
you win, then there's a
Yep.
win for everybody.
Yes. Yes.
And I really love that about the collective, and like just about all of my friends that have had children, they had doulas.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And I'm really starting to notice just that change, and even the change in just, going to the doctor as a Black person and going to white practitioners. I think it's all fine and dandy, but I know, like, when I go to the doctor, I let them know, look, if I tell you something, I need you to listen to me.
Right.
There is no Emily, I don't think. You don't live in my body,
Right.
and just that advocacy and teaching people to advocate for their medical health. I mean, that is major,
Yeah,
you know?
it's a big
It's,
deal because it goes
yeah.
even beyond like just pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
You go see your gynecologist, um, and you have to consent to them touching you. They should be
Mm-hmm.
asking you, "Can I
Mm-hmm.
touch you?" Not
Mm-hmm.
just, you're gonna feel a tug here." No, ma'am.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? And a lot of that comes from our own experiences of having it's our bodies. We
Mhm,
should have control of what
mhm,
happens to our bodies. And as Black women, for
mhm.
sure, we demand to have
Listen,
control of our bodies because
that part.
it's been a long, 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 long time.
Exactly.
And it's been a lot of trauma. So,
Mhm,
and I think that's also, on the part of the provider, like being informed about
mhm,
the culture of
mhm,
America, specifically when we're dealing with Black bodies.
mhm.
You have to be mindful of that
You
because
really
we're
do.
dealing with a lot. And it's not just because, we're making it up.
Yep.
We know the science now that it's
Mhm.
embedded in us, in our DNA through the
Right,
stress and it's passed on. And
right.
if we want to break those cycles, we've got to give people space and hold space for them to advocate for themselves.
Absolutely, absolutely, and for people like you, for the other doulas in the area that are doing the work, I mean, it's really invaluable, and I'm very, very happy and grateful that we have people like you that are doing the work. And also just really reminding people that, just like what you said, you have control of your own body, regardless of what our governments are trying to do. That's a whole nother conversation.
Well, no, and but I'm gonna tell you, it's not though, because your health care is directly tied to who you vote for, people. Okay, so
Say
you
that one more
your
time for the
your
people in the back.
let me.
Yes, clear.
Your health care is directly tied to your local votes, who you're voting for. If you want more in Medicaid, if you want more in your health care, you have to vote for people who are dedicated to
Mm,
creating that for you.
mm,
And if you're voting for the wrong folks, it's just going to close and make a tighter grip on that cash to get what you need, right? So be mindful. You're not just voting, about school or taxes for the roads, infrastructure and all that stuff. Lower
mm.
you're voting for, okay, what kind of health care do I want to, I mean, I live in Texas, okay? Do you know what's going on in Texas in regards to that?
Yep.
So we
Okay, go. I'll cut that out. It's
that's
fine.
it's like, do you know what's going on in Texas in
Yeah.
relationship to women's bodies? Like,
Yep.
it's
It's because it's the
icky.
same thing going on in Iowa.
Yeah, it's
It's
icky
horrible.
here. It's icky here. It's
Yeah.
bad. And so being able to understand that who you vote for is
Mhm.
going to impact your body,
Mhm.
I'm gonna need y'all to like really pay attention to
Yeah.
this next election that's coming up.
Ab absolutely,
Like,
and it's funny because it's not only your body,
mm,
it's the body of your children, it's the
yes,
body of your
mm,
friend's children,
absolutely.
it's all interconnected.
It's all
It is
interconnected.
all interconnected.
And it
So,
starts at the ground. Like, it's not just the president. It's
it
your
literally it's the
local
yes.
people.
Last question for you before we wrap up the conversation here. You have really, just like what we've said, for every place that you've lived, you've gotten involved.
Mhm.
And with you becoming a doula, you're now having to essentially navigate the same thing in Texas, which is going to look totally different. So, my question to you is for Black women that are listening, that are thinking about going on this journey to become a doula, tell me one or two things you wish you would have known before you became a doula that you
Mm.
know now that you think would be valuable as they start this journey.
Wow. Ooh, that's a really good question. What would I want someone to know? I think the biggest thing is that you have to be willing to make connections in the community.
Mhm.
I think that's a big part of missed opportunities or being just understanding how things work, right? Like as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, you're networking and you're kind of most times looking at like the dollar. Like you're like,
Mhm.
am I
Right.
gonna make this money?
Right.
But it's gotta be deeper than that. In this
Mhm.
particular work, because you might see some traumatic things, you might see some really heartbreaking things. You have to be a resource for your community,
Mhm.
and you have to do that very well. You have to be willing to walk into the spaces that no one else is walking into and grabbing a card and getting information and saying, "This is who I am. This is what I do. I might need you. Can I have your
Mhm.
card?" Because that's going to be the staple for you being the best kind of doula that there
Mhm.
is. If you if you don't have resources for people when they're in a very sensitive state, they're not going to be able to have the type of birth that they want. And when I say that, I mean, if you have a family or a mom who's worried about where she's going to live,
Mhm.
how is she going to birth?
Yeah. Yep.
What part of that is she like? How is she going to birth? Right?
Mhm.
What is she bringing her child into?
Mhm.
That stress, not the actual place, but like the stress of that.
Mhm.
If the mom is worried about food,
Mhm.
how is that going to impact her birth? How
Mhm.
preterm labor?
Mhm.
All of these things come back to this higher, what is this called? Whose hierarchy? Somebody's hierarchy
Right.
of needs, right? You
Right.
you have to deal with those things first. Your shelter, feeling safe, having food, having access to certain things. If that's those needs aren't met, then we're gonna have a problem. You're gonna
Right.
see more issues with preterm labor. You're gonna see more issues with just any kind of health
Mhm.
um, disparity that you could ever think of, especially for
Right.
Black people. You're gonna see it.
Yes. Mhm.
So that's my biggest advice is to be the type of person, a resourceful doula in the community where when someone comes to you, I don't care what it is. I need my grass cut. I can't sleep without. I got a lawn man for you. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like being
Right.
able because it takes that stress away. And
Mhm.
again, everything is not gonna fall that way. It's gonna be very difficult, it's gonna be
Mhm.
heartbreaking when someone is, worried about where they're gonna sleep or not having a bed for their child.
Mhm.
But the part about that is once you get in the community and you know where those resources are, how well do you feel about being able to present that mom with what she needs or that family
Right.
with what they need? And then helping them welcome a child into a loving space,
Mhm.
having their parents' needs met. The
Mhm.
love that's
Right.
encapsulated in that is amazing.
Right. I love that. And it goes back to, again, it's just, this is how we work within the community. We
Uh,
don't gatekeep.
uh,
We
uh,
make
uh.
sure that, you being a doula, that that lawn guy that can come cut the grass for low cost or free, or oh, this daycare, I know that they can offer services, or here's a food bank that you could go to, that you don't have a limit on how often you can go. So I think that is so important, and I feel like that could expand to just so many other positions, even in my position, making sure that, even as I do this podcast, I'm networking, and I'm creating these channels to where, someone says, "Oh, I'm listening to Black Girl Iowa, and I'm in Houston, Texas." You know,
That's right.
is there a doula in my area?
Yes,
Like,
there is. I can
you
tell
know
you
what
for
I
sure.
mean? Like,
Yes, right.
there are those things, and I think that is incredibly important, because, just the network and the village that you build is only just building a bigger support system for yourself. So, and that's definitely what we need for mothers, because I love asking my mom about my birth story. She
Mm.
always tells me, when I ask her this, like, almost like every Mother's Day, because I'm just that kind of daughter. She said that she woke up at about 4 a.m. having contractions. She took a shower. She got my sister ready. She nudged my dad. They took my sister to my aunt's house. 2 hours after getting to the hospital, I was born. And I'm just like, but mom, like, how was it that easy? She said it was easy because I told you, you got 2 hours. After that, you're staying in. I'm not doing it,
But
But it's one of those things where I haven't experienced it yet, but her story isn't going to be everyone's story.
no,
And
but
luckily,
but
my
no,
mother had a really good
I
support
gotta
system as
interrupt you
well.
because that's not what it is, Emily. Let me tell you what it is. No, and this is gonna hit to the heart of every person.
Mhm.
That's your first love story. That's your first love story.
Yeah.
When you ask the question about what your birth, like, "Mom, what was my birth?" That's your introduction to the world, and
Mhm.
no one wants to have their love story ruined
Mhm.
by other things, and
Right.
unfortunately, some of us, I'm raising my hand for those that can't
Mhm.
see, have had 2 love stories that have been interrupted
Right.
because no one kept it sacred. And
Mhm.
so, in the midst of me telling my story, there are gonna be 2 instances where I go, "And this sucks,"
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yep.
that's the thing, but the heart of it is it's your first love story,
Right.
and everybody wants to have a understanding of, like, "What were you doing when you had me, mom?" You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
what did you feel that it's your very first love story, and that sets the tone for a lot in your life,
Mhm.
and we don't realize it, but it does. So,
Yeah.
again, that's why doulas try to hold safe space because
Mhm.
that's the beginning of everyone's story.
Mhm. I love that. I love that. Imma make sure I ask my mom, like, "Mom, like, like, you're my first love story, right?
Yeah,
Like, when you give birth to
yeah,
me." So,
yeah.
she'll
Well,
probably
maybe
wave
second,
me
because if
off.
your daddy was
That's that's
it's
that's
your first
right.
love story. It's
I was
theirs.
probably
It's
actually, like,
their
number
second.
3,
3,
because there
yeah, I was
was
gonna
my
say.
dad, then there was my sister, then me.
No,
You know what?
and
I'm
I said
okay
it
with
right.
that.
No, but I said it right. I said, "Your
Mhm.
first love
My
story,
first love story.
honey."
Yes,
Okay?
and we all know how I feel about Doretha Johnson.
Yes,
So,
yes.
that woman is top
She
tier.
is
So,
she is top tier, y'all.
well, Clemente, thank you so much
Oh,
for taking the time and chatting with me on the podcast here on this wonderful episode. Before we go, I want to make sure that I roll the red carpet out to you. Tell people where they can find you on social media and all of those good things so we can follow your journey as a doula.
well, I am on all the social medias on Beyonce's internet,
Okay. Yes.
the
Yes.
interwebs of Blue Ivy. I am there at all the things at Clem the Doula on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok.
Okay.
What's the other thing? It's still I call it Twitter.
Oh, yeah, X.
Whatever.
Yeah.
I'm there. I'm in all those spaces.
But Clemente, thank you so much. This has just been such a great conversation, not only about just how much of a game changer you were when you lived here in Iowa,
Oh,
but also just seeing you continue on with this journey of being a doula and giving yourself the grace and space to do it in your own time,
yes,
I
yes.
think is,
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And I couldn't do it without my husband, y'all. This man
yes.
is dealing with me. And if you don't know me, uh, be a little mind.
Can't we all? But no, George is awesome too. Please
Yes,
make
he is.
sure you tell him I said hello.
I will.
Hug the kids for me. And so, what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and wrap it up right here. I will be back with my final thoughts and then I will tease the next episode. So, be right back. All right. Shout out to my girl, Clemente, for taking the time and just talking with me about her experience in Iowa, as well as her birth stories and just sharing her experience as a doula. I think conversations like this are incredibly important because, kind of like I already said on the show, I have not experienced childbirth. So some of the things that she said on the show that really meant a lot to me was, first of all, speaking about her experience in Indianola. So Indianola is a very red county. It's in Warren County. For her to be new to this community and really want to be a part of said community, and to be received, but to not have people want to be there for her the way she was there for other people, especially during that time in 2020, was really hard. And I really think that that's one of the reasons why advocacy and protesting is so prevalent and strong in the Black community, is because we know no one is going to do the fighting for us. We have to do it for ourselves. Um, and that was definitely something that she really talked about and really leaned into during her time in Indianola and here in Iowa. Um, I also think that um, again, those protests that she did, I went to a couple of them myself driving down from Des Moines. And it was really one of those moments where you have to remind people that we are here and that our lives, our bodies, that they matter. And again, I feel like the counter, of course, to Black Lives Matter was what? It was Blue Lives Matter or All Lives Matter, right? And the crazy thing is, and I think Dave Chappelle said it best when he said, when you are a cop, you get to go home and take that uniform off. There's no such thing as a blue life, but there is a Black life. And because of the ways that we are unjustly attacked and murdered, and our bodies are often violated, having to remind people of that in this day and age is wild, but it needs to be said. And if there was truly respect for all lives, then Black Lives Matter would not need to happen. That whole summer was really hard for Black people. But at the same time, it's nothing that we hadn't already seen before. And I think a lot of the time, too, what typically happens is, oh, well, that happened far away from me. No, it didn't. Minneapolis is only 4 hours away. It wasn't that far away. So really reminding people that if it can happen there, it can happen anywhere, I thought was really important. Moving into also her talking about becoming a doula. I really enjoyed that conversation about being a doula because her becoming a doula was rooting in her own birth story. And when she had said birthing a child, that is their first love story. And I like that kind of took me aback, right? Because as a child, as a baby, the first people you love are your parents, the people that brought you into the world. And so I really appreciate her sharing that story, but I also really appreciate how that story and the encouragement of people got her to a point where she said, I want to do something about this and I want to advocate. And then last but not least, your health care is tied directly to who you vote for. that is so incredibly important because of what we are currently seeing now with these 6-week abortion bans that have not only taken effect here in Iowa, but they have all across the country. And it's something to where you have to remember that your body, you should have full control and dominion over. And the fact that we are now seeing more and more reports and hearing stories of women that are dying because they couldn't get an abortion because of a failed pregnancy. It almost makes me more scared about what is to come in the next 4 years and beyond. So, overall, though, I truly appreciate Clemente coming on. I will be sure to have all of her information linked for you guys in the show notes. Please be sure to go and follow her on Instagram at Clem the Doula. She is also on TikTok with the same handle. So again, thank you so much for joining this week's episode. Next week, I will have Dr. Wanaki Carr and Erica Bailey joining me for part 2 of Black Girl Politics, where we debrief and talk about the election. Yes, it took us a while because it's a lot to process, but I really think that you guys are really going to enjoy the commentary that we have as we are speaking as Black women and how the election affects us, but also how it relates to our professions and what we essentially want to do over the next 4 years and how we all feel that we're going to work together to get through it. So thank you so much for being here today. You guys can always check me out. I am on TikTok and Instagram at Black Girl Iowa. Also, don't forget, every Wednesday, the audiovisual episode of this podcast will drop on my YouTube channel, also called Black Girl Iowa, and it will be under the playlist Black Girl Iowa audio visual episodes. Last but not least, the Black Girl Iowa pre-order shop for merch will be open until December 15th. So if you are interested in ordering a hoodie, a crew neck sweatshirt like the one I'm currently wearing, a t-shirt, a tote bag, or even one of my notebooks, please make sure you're heading over to my Etsy shop, Black Girl Iowa shop, to go ahead and put your pre-order in. I have also listed greeting cards that I have created over the last few years, and I would really love to find them good homes for $1, $2, and $3. Please make sure you're also checking those out. I have a host of holiday cards for you guys, so please be sure to go check those out. Thank you again so much for listening. This is your girl Emily with Black Girl Iowa, and I will catch you guys on the next one.